Um, Imagine spending, I don't know, 35 years building a massive multi-million-dollar regional accounting firm.
Right. You're the face of the practice.
Exactly. I mean, you've put in the grueling hours, you've handled the most complex engagements, brought in the biggest whales, and, well, eventually you decide it's time to step back.
Which is the goal, right? You want to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, so you do everything completely by the book. You call in the lawyers, draft this ironclad succession plan, pick a brilliant younger partner to take over, and you even overlap with them for 2 full years.
That sounds like a dream scenario on paper, honestly.
Right. Then you finally retire to the golf course, but 6 months later, 20% of your firm's revenue just walks out the door straight to a competitor.
Oh, man.
Oh.
It's the ultimate nightmare scenario for a professional services firm. And frankly, we see it happen every single day.
Yeah, it's rough. Welcome to this deep dive for Transfer Ready by Succession Strength. Today, we are breaking down why the standard playbook for professional services succession is just, well, a guaranteed recipe for failure.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, the terrifying part of that story you just told is that the firm did everything they were supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. The agreements were signed, the timeline was set, the ink was dry.
But it highlights this massive fundamental disconnect that we see happening across the entire industry. Firms are, they're fundamentally confusing planning with preparation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I feel like that distinction really exposes the false sense of security owners have when they just, check that legal box.
Yeah, that's the core of the illusion right there. I mean,
Yeah.
a written plan is just a legal mechanism.
Right.
It names a successor, it dictates equity transfer, sets a date. But preparation is mechanical. Preparation ensures that the actual lifeblood of the firm, the client trust, the revenue streams, the institutional knowledge, that all of that actually physically transfers over.
Which is huge. It's like writing down a highly complex recipe for a Michelin star meal and assuming that means dinner is already cooked, plated, and sitting on the table.
That's a perfect way to put it.
You have the instructions, sure, but nobody has actually sourced the ingredients, or chopped the onions, or mastered the technique. The document itself doesn't do the work.
Precisely. And in professional services, whether you're a law firm, a wealth management group, an engineering consultancy, the entire value of your firm lives in relationships.
Yeah.
If those relationships aren't institutionalized, your firm simply isn't transferable. I don't care how thick the partnership agreement is.
So true. And when we look at how firms actually try to do the work, we see exactly why they fail. They rely on what we call the co-lead illusion.
Ah, yes, the standard playbook.
Every firm seems to do this, right? The outgoing partner brings the successor into the conference room. They do the warm, glowing introductions.
They take everyone out for a nice steak lunch.
Exactly. And then they co-lead the quarterly reviews for a while. The firm's executive committee pats themselves on the back and says, great job, the relationship is institutionalized.
But the psychology of the client tells a completely different story. Well, client trust is forged in the fire of crisis. When a business owner is facing, say, a massive hostile IRS audit or a complex bet-the-company lawsuit, they do not seek comfort from the firm's logo.
Right. They don't care about the branding on the glass door.
Exactly. They seek comfort from the specific human being who has guided them through the trenches for the last 20 years. The trust is entirely personal.
But wait, I have to push back on this playfully for a second. If the successor is literally right there in the room, shaking hands, demonstrating competence, making small talk, co-leading the meeting, how is the client not building trust with them?
I hear that all the time. But mere presence does not transfer authority.
Really? Even if they're actively talking.
Think of it like this. Imagine a brilliant veteran surgeon explaining their technique to an intern for 2 years, right? But the intern just holds the clipboard and nods.
Okay.
When it's time for the intern to perform the complex surgery alone, the patient isn't going to care how many times they watch the master do it. They want the master.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
When the senior partner is in the room, the client's brain still views that senior partner as the ultimate safety net.
Ah, so the client is subconsciously categorizing the successor as just like a highly capable assistant.
Yes, exactly. A glorified paralegal or a junior analyst, no matter what their actual title is on their business card.
Because they know the boss is right there to fix it if things go south.
Precisely. The client knows that if push comes to shove or if a real crisis hits, the senior partner will step in. Because of that safety net, the client never actually transfers their reliance to the successor.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because that brings us back to our opening scenario. The 35-year managing partner at the regional accounting firm.
Right, the one who lost 20% of their revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They spent 2 full years overlapping. I mean, 2 years sounds like an eternity in business. If you sit next to someone for 2 years, you learn their job. How do you spend that much time transitioning and still drop the ball this hard?
Because time spent overlapping is completely meaningless if it isn't spent transferring authority.
So what did they actually do for 2 years then?
Well, the successor in that specific case never led a client relationship independently, not once in those 2 years.
You're kidding, not even once.
Nope. The senior partner was always CC'd on the emails, always sitting in on the big strategy calls, always chiming in at the end to validate the successor's points.
Just constantly hovering.
Yeah. And when the senior partner finally left, the safety net vanished instantly. The client felt exposed, they panicked, and they took their business to a competitor where they felt secure.
And because the senior partner was already off playing golf, it was entirely too late for the firm to intervene. The damage was done.
Exactly.
So presence isn't enough, time isn't enough. If I'm listening to this and realizing, uh-oh, my firm's transition plan is just a series of introductory lunches and shared email threads, how do we actually fix the mechanics of this?
Yeah, it's a structural issue. You have to build the 3 non-negotiable pillars of institutionalization.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
Every professional services firm must build these if they want to survive a partner transition. The first pillar is client trust, but specifically through what we call systematic co-management.
Systematic co-management. What does that physically look like? How is it different from the co-lead illusion we just talked about?
It requires the senior partner to actively, deliberately, and sometimes very uncomfortably step back.
That's got to be hard for them.
Oh, it's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
It means the successor has to lead the meetings entirely. They have to make the hard recommendations to the client. They have to deliver the bad news.
Right.
And here's the critical mechanism. They have to do it without the senior partner in the room.
Oh, wow. So they just leave.
Yes. The senior partner has to physically leave the space, so the client is forced to experience the successor's competence, without looking over the successor's shoulder for validation.
Man, that sounds like a terrifying Band-Aid to rip off for a partner who has basically controlled the relationship for decades.
It is, but it's necessary.
How long does that independent operating phase take to actually solidify the trust? Are we talking a few weeks?
It varies, but it is never overnight. For straightforward relationships, this process takes, I'd say 3 to 6 months of the successor flying solo.
Okay, that's not too bad.
But for your larger, highly complex or highly demanding clients, the whales driving the bulk of your revenue, it frequently takes up to 12 to 18 months of independent operation before the client views the successor as their primary protector.
12 to 18 months of zero safety net. That is a real commitment.
It is. But transferring that client trust only works if the successor actually has the power to make decisions, which leads us to the second pillar.
Right, because if a successor tells a client, yes, we can adjust the scope of this audit, but then has to run back to the retired partner's ghost to get approval on the pricing, that newly earned trust just evaporates instantly.
Exactly. And that is pillar 2, decision authority. This is where we run into the massive structural danger of what we call partner fiefdoms.
Fiefdoms! I love that term.
It's so accurate, though. In far too many professional services firms, the partners essentially operate as independent contractors.
Yeah, they have their own little kingdoms.
Right. They set their own pricing margins, they manage their clients with their own bespoke processes, and they have their own hiring standards for their specific teams.
So what does this all mean for the business model? Because honestly, it sounds like a lot of these firms aren't actually unified businesses at all. They're just a collection of solo practitioners sharing a logo, a lease agreement, and a coffee machine in the break room.
That is a brutally accurate description of most mid-market firms.
Yeah.
And a fiefdom model is fundamentally not transferable.
Because you can't sell a coffee machine and a logo.
Right. If a firm wants to survive a generational handoff, they have to move to firm-centric governance.
Meaning what exactly?
When a successor steps in, they need to inherit a role that has real, institutionalized authority backed by the firm's collective standards. not just a list of clients that they now have to frantically resell themselves to under some arbitrary pricing model the senior partner made up on the fly over drinks.
But wait, practically speaking, you can't just slap a firm-wide governance policy on a rainmaker who brings in $5 million a year and say, from now on, you share your clients and conform to our pricing.
Oh, they would lose their minds.
Yeah, they'll just leave. They'll walk across the street to a competitor and take their entire book of business with them. How do you enforce this without blowing up the firm?
You are hitting on the exact reason most firms avoid this completely. You cannot change the governance until you change the compensation model.
Ah, follow the money.
Always. The how behind dismantling fiefdoms is entirely driven by incentives. If a partner's bonus and take-home pay are based purely on an eat-what-you-kill origination model, they will guard those relationships with their life.
They will never transition a client. Why would they? It costs them money.
Exactly. The firm must redesign compensation to reward enterprise value and successful transition milestones. You have to financially incentivize the senior partner to hand over the reins.
That makes perfect sense. If the financial incentives align with transition rather than hoarding, the governance policies follow naturally.
Yep, the behavior follows the money.
Okay, so we have Pillar 1, transferring client trust through physical absence. Pillar 2, transferring decision authority by shifting compensation and governance away from fiefdoms. What is the third missing link?
Pillar 3 is knowledge, specifically tacit knowledge. This is the hidden trapdoor that swallows firms whole.
Tacit knowledge, like the stuff that's not written down anywhere.
Exactly. Think about the sheer volume of context that lives exclusively inside a senior partner's head.
Oh, the ghost relationships. Like knowing that a specific client's CFO absolutely hates being pitched new services during Q3.
Right.
Or, why a certain vendor gets a 10% discount because of a handshake deal made a decade ago.
Exactly. Or the intricate, unspoken pricing logic for a client whose business model is highly unusual.
Right.
If that tacit knowledge just walks out the door when the partner retires, the successor is flying blind. They're going to make entirely avoidable mistakes.
Like stepping on landmines they didn't even know were there.
Exactly. They're going to change a reporting format that the client fought to establish 5 years ago, which instantly irritates the client.
Ouch.
Or they're going to waste massive amounts of non-billable hours just trying to reconstruct the historical context that the senior partner took with them to the country club.
So how do you practically capture that? I mean, you can't just download a partner's brain into a flash drive.
You have to operationalize it long before the transition date. Institutionalizing knowledge means rigorously documenting the decision logic in your CRM, not just the contact details.
So beyond just names and phone numbers.
Way beyond that. It means creating specific client playbooks. It means a structured, months-long onboarding process for the successor that maps out every idiosyncratic landmine in the client's history, rather than just doing a quick handoff meeting over a cup of coffee.
It's terrifyingly easy for any firm to fall into this trap. I mean, we look at that accounting firm who lost 20% of their revenue, and we want to think it's an isolated incident, like an anomaly.
But it's really the norm.
Yeah. If we're being honest with ourselves, most firms are operating with these massive blind spots. So if you're listening to this and you want to know if your firm is actually transferable right now, today, how do you measure it?
Well, the first step is acknowledging the immense danger of guessing.
People love to guess.
They do. Most firm leaders guess at their transferability. They assume their great culture will carry them through, and they are almost always wrong. We need a hard reality check. There are 5 critical indicators you need to look at immediately.
Let's walk through them. If I'm auditing my own firm's readiness right now, what is the very first red flag I should look for?
Look at communication patterns during a crisis. If something goes wrong on a major account, whose phone rings?
Ah, that's a good one.
Do key clients have deep working relationships with anyone other than the lead partner? If the lead partner's cell phone is the only number the client calls, you are entirely exposed.
Right. And what about the independent operating phase we talked about earlier? How do we measure if that's actually happening?
That's the second indicator. Has the designated successor managed that specific client relationship independently, meaning no safety net, no oversight in the room, for at least 6 continuous months?
And if the answer is no?
Then the trust has not transferred, period.
Wow. Okay, and I imagine the knowledge piece is the easiest to audit, but probably the hardest to fix if we look at pricing, for example.
Yep, that's indicator number 3. Is the logic behind your largest client's pricing structures thoroughly documented and accessible? or does it live solely in a partner's head?
That's scary to think about.
It is,
Hmm.
because if the partner had to take medical leave tomorrow, would the team even know why the client is billed the way they are?
Probably not. Which naturally brings up the fiefdom issue we discussed. Indicator 4 has to be about ownership, right?
Correct. Does the firm actually practice shared client ownership, supported by the compensation model? Or are you operating as a collection of partner-specific silos?
A bunch of solo acts.
Exactly. And then the ultimate stress test indicator 5.
Lay it on us.
If a key rainmaker left unexpectedly tomorrow, would the firm know exactly how to price, manage, and deliver their largest client engagement without missing a single beat?
Listeners, tally your answers to those 5 indicators. It's easy to nod along while listening, but if you look at your own largest client right now,
Hmm.
if you walked out the door tomorrow, would they stay?
If you're hesitating, that's a red flag.
Yeah. If you cannot answer a definitive, confident yes to at least 3 of those scenarios, your firm is not ready. The gap between where you are and where you need to be is completely measurable, but you have to measure it now. You cannot wait to discover the gaps after the retirement party.
Because by then, the value has already left the building.
Yeah.
The difference between having a legacy business that endures and having a highly paid job that ends when you do comes down to understanding these gaps.
And you really don't have to guess where those gaps are anymore. We have built the Professional Services Transition Readiness Diagnostic.
It is incredibly effective,
Hmm.
and it takes exactly 15 minutes to complete.
That's nothing.
Right. It comprehensively evaluates your business's attractiveness and transferability.
Mhm.
Specifically, it puts a hard metric on exactly what we've been talking about today.
So it actually measures the pillars.
Yes. Your level of client trust, institutionalization, your progress on decision authority transfer, and your firm's knowledge continuity.
It basically takes the blinders off. It shows you exactly what will happen to your revenue when a partner leaves, which allows you to systematically close those gaps on your own timeline.
Instead of scrambling in a sheer panic when a resignation letter hits your desk.
Because true preparation is about building systems that make the individual dispensable.
Absolutely.
Consider this. What if the ultimate measure of a highly successful professional services firm isn't its current profit margin or its prestigious client list, but its bus factor?
The bus factor, I love that.
Right. If you, the founder or key partner, were hit by a bus tomorrow, how many days before the firm collapses? True succession isn't about simply finding a replacement for your desk. It's about engineering the firm so that you become entirely irrelevant to its continued success.
Your ultimate legacy is building a machine that doesn't need you anymore.
That is the highest form of leadership. You've spent decades building a highly successful practice. Don't let your life's work turn into a liability the moment you decide it's time to enjoy your retirement.
Ensure the value remains long after you're gone.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We highly encourage you to visit successionstrengths.com or email info@successionstrength.com to measure your partner transition readiness, and we'll sign off by asking you to follow the Transfer Ready by Succession Strength podcast for more conversations on what it takes to prepare a business for succession or sale.